Have you ever wondered if you were born in a different place, to a different family, with different siblings, growing up with different friends, living different life altogether, how your life would be? And if you look at other people across the world, you would see how different you are from each and every individual. And at the same time, you are very similar to every single human, and for that matter, similar to a lot of living beings too. We are, very close to gorillas and chimpanzee and monkeys, and we can see the same animalistic, I won't say animalistic, but similar behaviors uh, within within our personality as well. But if you start categorizing yourself or identifying yourself based on where you were born, then first of all, I believe that you're limiting yourself to a specific place. Um, and that's where the whole nationality topic comes into picture, right? Like you can uh, identify yourself based on the place you were born, and if that is strong connection for you for whatever reason, you would definitely identify yourself as that nationality. Like I was born in India, so I'm an Indian uh, by nationality. But there are people who are born in US and ethnically they are Indian too. So they're still Indian even though they are not Indian citizens. Likewise, it goes for every country, obviously. But the reason I want to talk about this specific topic, first of all, this topic is um, kind of crazy, weird for sure. Like a lot of people are still uh, kind of caught up in this nationality narration, and I see the point why they are because to give you an example of U.S., which is economically, the most richest country in the world, and for that reason, there are a lot of other people who want to come to U.S. because that brings economic stability into their life and give them more opportunity and whatnot. Uh, so I get it. Like when people here are super nationalistic, like not all of them, obviously, but some of them, to the level that they identify themselves only as American and not as a human, not as anything else, then that created this chaotic environment where uh, people started hating other people who came from other countries. So there is a lot of traction, a lot of friction between the nationals here and the immigrants. And again, not everyone. There are very limited, very less amount of people who are super nationalistic and just believe that America is their land and no one else should be here, even though ironically their ancestors came from other countries. And likewise, even in India, uh, it's very similar situation because India is economically uh, powerful compared to its neighbor, and that's why a lot of people are migrating to India, especially from Bangladesh, because there are more opportunities, economic opportunities, so to speak. And to make it kind of worse in general, the population within those countries, like for an example, population within Bangladesh is so dense that uh, at some point people will be migrating to other places, not just India, but every other country. And I personally believe that the whole world is ours, so we should be able to migrate to various places. And I totally get it. You just can't go to any place and just call yourself as the native of that place. So there has to be some rules or laws to make sure that no one is misusing the opportunities, or no one is bringing in violence or whatever you call it, like in the new region. And now I'm See, this is a very difficult topic, and I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible, because I know a lot of my family members, they are super nationalist, and surprisingly, it's not because of the identity of India per se, but it's mostly coming from the identity of their religion, and which is uh, which is saddening because, first of all, the identity of Indians are people who lived close to Indus Valley River, or in Indus River, not Indus Valley, Indus River, and created civilization near Indus Valley, and that's where the name India came about, right? So technically, that means like anyone who's living in that region is Indian, and obviously, and that's how the term Hindu also came about, because uh, the people who live in the land of Hind, or Sindh, as it used to be known at the time, are Hindus. So there wasn't any. It wasn't linked with any religion, so to speak, and that's a whole different conversation. But now that in the current world, Hindu means a specific people who follow a specific religion, like the Vedic aspect of Hinduism. Even though Hinduism is super complex, no one has their authority on Hinduism, and no one can. There are actually scriptures in Vedas too, uh, which talk about nihilism, which talk about atheism, agnosticism, and most of these gods are like construct in the later part. But that being said, I mean, in the current situation, Hindus are the people who follow Hinduism, and when people mix their nationality with their religion, they first of all create this confusion that India is not a Hindu nation. It is not. If it were a specific religious nation, it wouldn't be secular. It's pretty obvious. It's The idea of India has always been to invite uh, people all over the world. In fact, that was one of the reasons why India used to be one of the most economically powerful nation, uh, because we invited traders from all over the country, all over the world. We invited people from within different uh, nations within India, because India wasn't always united as it is today. It was, separated by a lot of different sub nations, so to speak. But overall, Indians uh, were inviting of all the other people from across the world. So that's how we got invaded by, well, in that also, I mean, because it was economically so powerful, that also led to invasions from a lot of other nations, and eventually, India itself was captured by different rulers in 1400 or 1300, or let me say, well, uh, in 1300 or 1400, sometime around that, there were a lot of Central Asian nations who attacked in India and captured like vast part of India, and they brought their culture and their religion, which is Islam, with them. And after a few hundred years, they were like Britishers who captured India, and they brought their culture. And we can totally see today that India is a fusion of these cultures. Like the what I'm wearing, it's not a traditional Indian attire. It's super westernized, and trust me, like if you go to India, you would hardly, well, I won't say hardly, but maximum amount number of people will be wearing Western attire. So that's the Western culture, which was which Indians in today's DNA has inherited. So the what I'm getting at is there is no specific identity for India. India is a fusion of cultures, fusion of different religions. But there is a constant effort by current government of India to change that narrative. In few instances, I don't care or it doesn't bother me. Like for an example, the super crazy religious people who are in power in India have started changing names of different cities and towns. To be honest, it doesn't matter to me because it's just a name. Sure, it just reflect of the reality on the ground. Like if you give power to any crazy religious people, they're gonna start changing laws and pushing down their religion onto others, or some sort of or some version of their religion onto others. And if just changing the names of cities make them happy, I'm all for it. It doesn't matter to me because what's in a name, as Shakespeare said. Uh, the name doesn't change the essence of anything. Like if you don't call a rose, it doesn't start. It doesn't stop um, expressing its fragrance. It's still gonna be a rose. It's just a name. So name doesn't matter at all. But right now there's a push to kind of create an environment uh, where where I'm trying to find the right words so that I don't uh, I, I don't say something which isn't true. Or the point is, right now, the government in power is pushing a narrative and creating this environment where they want to encourage uh, one religion over the other, and clearly it's Hinduism. And the model they kind of came up with is to let citizens prove their citizenship to the government. Um, this is not the entirety, but that's one of the baseline. Like people who've been living in India now have to prove their citizenship. But if you're Hindu, you're automatically a citizen. But if you're non-Hindu, then you would have to prove that your parents were born in India or something on that line, like uh, which is actually very, very, very crazy because government shouldn't have any government shouldn't make any laws which require citizens to prove their citizenship, right? And people who actually migrated in India. I get that. Yeah, you there is a process. So if it's an illegal migration, then you have to go through different process, and if it's a legal migration, then it's a different process, obviously. So if there is anyone who came in India illegally and they are not on papers and government documents, and I understand they have to go through the process to list themselves in government database, and that's pretty natural because with over a billion people, it would be super chaotic if government don't have records of who actually are the citizens. But at the same time, this um, this requirement of uh, creating a database of all the citizens is being misused currently, because now the government passed a law which essentially let anyone who any minorities in the neighboring countries, like the Hindus, the Christians, the Sikhs, the I don't know what other religion minority exist in Bangladesh and Pakistan. Uh, but any of these minorities, if they come to India, then they will be fast tracked to get citizenship. Um, and the reason which they sort of bring up is that because these minorities are suffering uh, with violence and other atrocities from the majority in those countries. So basically, Pakistan or Bangladesh, which is majority of uh, Islam followers, has historically been violent towards minority, and it's not. I'm not generalizing, but yeah, there has been documented cases. So it's pretty obvious. Like, to give you an example, like in Mexico, there are drug cartel which are creating this violent environment, which is forcing the natives of those region to migrate to U.S. to take refuge in U.S. Likewise, even in Bangladesh and Pakistan, there are people who have been suffered because of the religion, and they migrated to India to take refuge, and Indian government choose to fast track that process, and that's fine. I mean, uh, if someone is actually if someone left their entire um, life from their native country and migrated to a different country because they are scared for their life, for the life of their children and family, and if the government of the country where they migrated to have fast tracked the citizenship process, that's all right. I don't think uh, I mean, we can debate if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just basically just a rules or law, so it doesn't matter. But what I have an issue with is when they create a definition of who can get fast tracked citizenship. Like, if let's just say, just to give you a wild scenario, let's just say if I don't know if it's true. So uh, but if Bangladesh is majority of Shia, which is a sect in Islam, and if they started killing the other sect of Islam, which is Sunni, so uh, like every religion, obviously they have their own divisions. So Islam has Shia and Sunni, and if one of the sect started killing or create or being violent towards the other sect, then in that case, the Sunni is the minority. And if they migrated to India, they should, I believe, they should get the similar uh, treatment as the other minorities religious, like Hindus, Christians who are migrating from there. Because the reason I'm saying that is because whenever there is a majority, there are going to be elements where they will start uh, suppressing minority. And that could be based on religion, that could be based on color of the skin, that could be based on language, that could be based on whatever the hell you identify with. Whatever the people identify with, they get trapped in this own box um, of differentiating themselves from others. So in US, for an example, it's not the division is not based on uh, religion so much as it is based on the color of the skin. In India, it's based on religion and not so much on the color of the skin. Well, I mean, there are divisions within color of skin and other features or you know genetic aspect within India, different regions of India too. But mostly it's because of the religion. So which is kind of opposite dynamic, right? Like because India is divided based on what people believe from inside, and US is divided based on what people look like from outside. And I could see the similar patterns, being living in living in US and has lived my whole life in India. I can see the similar patterns, and when I was majority, when I was living in India, I was the majority, and have a privilege because my name is itself kind of identify me as a specific religion, right? So when I go through any process, it's easier for me to, uh, you know, uh, get the get the it's easier for me to let's just say get the passport than someone else because let's someone who sounds whose name sounds like you know Arabic or Islamic or Christian for that matter. I'm just making this up, so I don't know if it's true, but I do know that there has been a lot of fake encounters, for an example, against minorities, against Muslims in different parts of India, just because they are Muslim. And likewise, there has been systematic discrimination uh, for minorities like Muslims, and not just that, against other minorities as well. Like within Hinduism, it's they have different categories, and that just to say, like Hinduism itself is not united. It's divided, pretty much. I mean, it never wasn't united. Let's just say that. Hinduism itself have like different sects, and the top tier sect, which call themselves as the gatekeepers of God, uh, they has been discriminating against the workers, the lowest sect. But that being said, like there always going to be some sort of division between uh, people. Like that's how I believe people categorize and associate themselves with a specific tribe. And if you know me personally, I I don't speak in favor of any religion. In fact, I I I'm not an advocate of Islam. I'm not an advocate of Hinduism. I'm not an advocate of Christianity. I'm not an advocate of you name it. To me, religion is just an identity with which people tend to kind of identify just to feel that they are they belong to some tribe. But when the religion is used to create more discrimination and conflict between people, it's not gonna end well. It may not be now. Maybe in like 5 years or 10 years, we will see the repercussion of the law which the Indian state had passed, and a lot of people kind of are confused because they say that the government should be able to create any law, which is not true, which shouldn't be true. In fact, people should always be vigilant with what laws have been created or passed. Uh, it's not just in India, even in US. I mean, there are so many idiotic laws. There are so many biased laws. There are so many laws which favor only a very very few people to it's kind of mind boggling. But the government is just a gatekeeper. The government is not good or bad. The people who are in government, they can create good environment, good policies or bad policies. And I'm I've been observing this pattern in India in and in a lot of other places in the world too, because there is this wave of right wing parties coming into power, like the Republican Party in U.S., the Conservative Party in Britain, and the Bharatiya Janata Party in India. But I don't know how much of that, how much of BJP is really for Janta, for people, and how much of them are just for their personal power, personal gain. But it's a complex issue, and I'm gonna keep on observing on where it leads. Uh, in a way, I'm privileged that my citizenship is safe. I hope so. Well, my parents were born in India, my grandparents were born in India, and I was born in India, so by birth, I'm Indian. But I feel sad for people whose parents were born in India and who were born in India as well and belonged from a religious minority or group, or especially from Muslim community, and have to now uh, prove their citizenship. And in some cases, it would be exploit. I'm sure this law will be exploited. It's all a setup. It's it's on surface everything looks like, okay, yeah, I just give my information. That's what government would need to protect the country, right? Yeah, for sure. But how does government utilize this information to misuse it, especially to let me rephrase, not the government, the party in power. They're gonna use these laws to push their agenda and create more division within the country. And I guess they are following the golden rule, uh, divide and rule. And whenever the government gonna start dividing people based on any specific thing, it may win for a little while, but in a long game, it's definitely gonna lose. It's not good for country, for sure. At the same time, India has unique uh, problems. I mean, it's not just the the resources or lack of resources per se, because even though India is one of the economic power in the world, it still had so many people that the average income, the GDP, falls way below what it should be. And on top of that, when people migrate from other countries, it add to the population, obviously. And on top of that, when there's a division between religion, and this has been for years or for centuries, so it's not new. And when these divisions get violent, that create fear within citizens in general. And that's when the government push some sort of crazy agenda and try to divide it further and just you know remain in power. I've been thinking about this topic for a while, and honestly, uh, in on surface, it doesn't look good. There are a lot of protest going on in India right now, uh, based on this law. And imagine U.S. passing a law where your citizenship is defined based on your color. So if you are born with less melatonin, then you're automatic a citizen. And if you're born with more, then you have to prove that you are your parents were born here, or some sort of crazy guidelines. So that's what's happening in India, but based on religion. And here's the thing: next few decades gonna be more um, gonna be more crazy, I guess, for lack of a better word, because climate change gonna create this situation around the world where people will be just running around trying to find uh, secure place for themselves and their family. And that's when we'll see how this refugee crisis across the globe gonna hit all the nations. And it's saddening to see that all the civilizations are taking uh, back steps instead of moving forward. I was, I mean, it's definitely not going to happen in my lifetime, but I hope like in future generation they're going to be more flexible boundaries between nations, like how the other animals does. Like, have you ever seen any animal just confined to the place they were born in? Like how many tigers are Indians? I mean, technically, yeah, because all the tigers, most of the tigers are born in Indian region. So yeah, they are Indian. But if you migrate a tiger to other place, I mean, tiger doesn't give a crap. I mean, call it an Indian, call it an American, call it an, I don't know, an African. It doesn't matter to tiger. So we at the end we all are animals, and I hope that at some point the boundaries between nation become so flexible that people can move around easily and find the place which they associate with, they want to live, they want to create their life around, regardless of their religion, color, or for that matter even nationality. But I'm sure it's not going to happen in my lifetime. Uh, I hope it happens in the future. But that enough said. Enough of my uh, uh, pushing down my opinion on this crazy law. And now I want to do what I'm here for, to sit and meditate for an hour. And I find peace when I do meditation, because not just I'm observing my own thoughts and observing how I'm reacting to those thoughts, how I'm reacting to the emotions those thoughts brings within me, but at the same time it's a brain reset, it's a training for my brain, so that when I go out or do my daily things. I can not be a reactory. In fact, I can take a step back. I can think through. I can calmly uh, take an action instead of just be anxious and reacting to whatever the situation might throw uh, on my way. All right. So, what time is it? It's 12:20 here, and I'm gonna sit for an hour and meditate, and by focusing on my breath and body sensations, and you guys get to enjoy just watching me, and if you're lucky, I'll be taking nap here and there, and you can see my head banging in real time too. Okay, with that note, I'm gonna get started. Hey Google, set an alarm for an hour from now.
Got it. Your alarm set for 1:20 a.m.
Hey Google, stop. Thanks for joining me on this session, and until next time, stay peaceful.